All right, welcome everyone to the second symposium of the Prevention Practitioners Network. We are delighted to have you all join us today. The Prevention Practitioners Network, for those of you who are new to our work, is a national network of interdisciplinary professionals committed to preventing targeted violence, terrorism, and their impacts across the United States. We're also collaborating in this symposium with the Canadian Practitioners Network, especially on our plenary tomorrow. So we welcome Canadian Practitioners Network members here as well. This symposium is specifically focused on integrating threat assessment and management, really looking at how do those two processes interact and support one another. We've got a phenomenal keynote lined up for you this morning from the National Threat Assessment Center and the the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. And then we'll have a series of facilitated conversations today, one led by two of our program committee members on clarifying roles and competencies when you're integrating assessment and management, and another on reconciling language across all of the different forms of assessments that practitioners use and all of the different disciplines that are represented in these conversations here over the next 2 days. Tomorrow, we'll kick it off with a plenary conversation that's jointly hosted with the Canadian Practitioners Network, focused on challenges in multi-sectoral collaboration. Canadian Practitioners Network will be sharing a nationwide research study, findings from that study, and then Patty Kicklin will be sharing a US-based perspective and response. Our facilitated conversations tomorrow focus on integrating assessment and management, specifically in the context of schools. And then we have a phenomenal panel of all different perspectives and all different levels of law enforcement, addressing when and how to involve law enforcement in integrated assessment and management programs. So that's what we have set out for you over the next 2 days, and we hope you can join us as much as you are able. I want to flag a couple things. So many of you should have received by email a survey on the Prevention Practitioners Network. The survey allows us to strengthen our programs with input and ideas from all of you, and it also allows the evaluation team from the Research Triangle Institute to evaluate our work. And so we please ask that all of you participate in that survey, which Neil just populated in the chat. If you've already filled it out, no need to fill it out again in the last 2 weeks, but if you haven't filled it out yet, please do so. And we'll be repeating that survey every 3 months to see how you're using the materials from this network over time, and how hopefully we're supporting you in expanding your pool of organizations you're collaborating with over time. I also want to introduce our new colleague, Neil Saul. Neil is just joined us 3 weeks ago. Many of you knew Addie Fairley, who was our senior program coordinator for the Prevention Practitioners Network. Neil is now in that role, and he's going to populate an email address in the chat. Please, if you have any questions about this event, if you would like to join the directory of providers that we're putting together, or you'd like to join any of the committees of this network, reach out to the email address Neil is populating in the chat, and we are happy to include you in all of the network's activities. Without further ado, I really want to allow our committees to share the phenomenal work they've been up to. We have 5 committees for the network, and The committee chairs, one of the committee co-chairs for each committee will be joining us here today. Just a couple housekeeping items before we start. This time, this symposium is a little different from the last symposium. We are using the same Zoom link for all sessions to make your lives easier. You do not have to find different links. For each session, you can join back in on this link and you will be in the right place. Before each of the plenary sessions, the keynotes today and tomorrow, we'll be doing some pre-survey questions. This is unique from the longer survey that Neil just populated in the chat to measure knowledge gain. We ask that everyone please participate in those. And then after each of those sessions, we'll have post questions. And for anyone who needs them, all of the resources from all of our historical workshops are included on the Practitioners Network webpage at the McCain Institute website. So we hope, even if this is your first workshop where you're joining us, we have recordings of past workshops, our practice guides, and read ahead materials for all of the content that we've produced available on that website. Throughout this conference, if you have any questions that you'd like to raise for the speakers, please type those in the chat, and we will make sure to allow for time for questions and discussion in each of these sessions. And today, unlike normal, where we try to record our workshops, we will not be recording the keynotes today from the National Threat Assessment Center and the FBI. So we'll record the committee updates for everyone who isn't able to join us right at this moment. We'll end the recording just before the keynote, and then we'll resume for later sessions. So now it is my pleasure to introduce the chairs of each of our committees to share updates on how that work is coming. And first, I want to introduce Dr. Amra Sadik Al-Rais. She is co-chair of the Development Committee and frankly co-chair of another committee as well, very active throughout all of our committee work. So Amra, please proceed.
Thank you, Brett, and thank you all for joining us today. I am delighted to report on behalf of Development Committee. I co-chair that committee with amazing Dave Fortier from One World Strong, who is with us today as well. As you can imagine, Development Committee is focused on devising a fundraising strategy to support the Prevention Practitioners Network long-term. We have been very busy. We have met about, I'm estimating here, maybe every 3 weeks over the last several months. So we've had very constructive discussions over that period of time. Specifically, we have been working on 4 key areas. One is creating a collective list of funding sources, including entities at the national, state, and regional levels. Second area of our focus has been discussing the role of corporate and foundation sponsorships and what would that actually look like. We are currently working on building a menu for potential sponsorship items. Third, we recognize the link between PPN's work and the efforts to promote democracy. So we are exploring ways to create a coherent narrative that makes that link apparent to attract donors, particularly those who might not be as familiar with our work, but deeply care about promoting democracy. And lastly, we are being very creative about exploring sponsorships for in-kind services that practitioners really need. Some examples include graphic designers, research assistants, internship placements, PR firms to workshop language, and so on. And that is all from Development Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Amra. That is a perfect example of just how active these committees have been. Next, I want to turn to Dr. Jim Marley. Jim is pulling double duty as well. He serves on both our advisory board and as co-chair of the ethics committee. So Jim, can you share what our very active ethics committee has been up to?
Sure, happy to, Brett. Welcome, everybody. As Brett said, I'm James Marley. I'm a professor of social work at Loyola University Chicago, and I'm very happy to be one of the co-chairs of the Ethics Committee with my colleague, Nicole Miller. You'll be hearing from more of us later on today as a part of the symposium with one of the facilitated conversations. As Brett indicated, the Ethics Committee has been very active. It is a very active committee with lots of very deep and excellent conversations. The main focus of the Ethics Committee has really been around two main issues. One is the development, establishment of a code of ethics for the practitioners network. So as the network grows and develops, there is a code of ethics to support the work of the network. And if you go to the network website, you can see the current iteration of the code of ethics to support the network's work. And as with all codes of ethics, as I always sort of indicated from my work, codes of ethics are living documents, meaning that they're never really done. And based on how things move forward with the network, input from members and everybody as the work of the network moves forward, there may be a need to revisit pieces of the code of ethics, but that is sort of the normal working process of how a code of ethics responds to current issues as well as emerging issues within the network and working in this space. The other big focus of the committee has been working on a complaint process. That is when, as the network moves forward and met with membership and obligations placed on members within the network, we wanted to create a mechanism by which if someone does something that violates the code of ethics of the network, or if another network member becomes aware of a concern of somebody else in the network regarding their adherence to the code of ethics, that there would be a reasonable and equitable process to address those complaints within the scope of the network. And so many of our committee meetings over the last couple of times have really been trying to hash out what that complaint process would look like, and really some very deep conversations about what it means to take on this work and how to do this work, like I said, in an equitable and just manner, in a timely manner, and within the scope of the network. And again, as similar with the code of ethics work, the complaint process and procedures with all of that are, again, a work in progress. And as the network moves forward and membership grows and activities expand, there may be needs to revisit, again, some of the processes and procedures we're putting in place. But if you have any questions about the Ethics Committee, please, send your questions or issues to the email that was put in the chat. And like I said, if you go to the network website, you can see the current iteration of the Code of Ethics. And again, we always invite feedback, comments about the Code of Ethics as the network grows and moves forward. So I think that's about it on my end, Brett.
Thank you for your leadership, Jen. Next, I want to turn to another very active network member, and that is Dave Fortier. Dave is co-chair alongside Amra of two committees, but he's here to report today on the membership committee. Dave.
Thanks, Brett. And first, just a huge thanks to you and your entire team for all you've done putting this together, both the committees and the program. It really is fantastic to be a part of. Also, a big thanks to Amra. I guess we were very good here showing up at the first meetings, and we get to do a few things together, which is fantastic. And Neil, thank you for all you've done to put things together. So first on membership, the advisory committee has decided to have a small dues after 1 year. So we're now in the process of looking at ways to determine how that'll be set up and implemented. The directory itself will actually be divided into two parts, resource and clinical professionals. So there'll be a resource page for both practitioners as well as the general public. And then we'll also have requirements and a threshold for each of the providers. And we're now reviewing such things as years of experience, hours of training, as well as the implementation of a sponsorship model. And we're also in the process of creating an application form for membership. And so the team is now, we're reviewing recommendations that currently exist. The mobile application that will house the practitioners network is scheduled to be live in April. We're actually just talking to the developers today, and everybody's very excited to get this out. We'll also be including members that be encouraged to assist in the testing of the application, as it'll be a soft launch process that we go through. And we're looking forward to growing the membership of the committee. And I just wanted to ask, speaking of that very quickly, Greg, who was speaking just before we got started, who is new, if you're looking for a committee, please feel free to give us a holler. All right, thank you.
And Dave, I think that call out goes to everyone. The membership committee would love additional members to help as we grow this network over time. I do want to clarify for everyone's benefit, the practitioners network content will remain accessible to everyone. We want this network to be as inclusive as possible. And if you are participating in our events, we consider you a part of this network. We are, however, setting those criteria that Dave mentioned for the directory of providers that will be hosted on an application as well as a website. So content will continue to be available to everyone. Our goal is to strengthen the field as a whole through building capacity among this cohort, among the practitioners, but we are setting criteria for that directory. Next, I want to turn to Nicole Miller. Nicole is co-chair of our programs committee, and you'll also be hearing from her later today in one of our facilitated conversations. Nicole.
Good morning, everyone. As Brett said, my name is Nicole Miller, and I am with the Ohio School Safety Center. Previously, I was a school counselor, and I've been an educator for 21 years. So I want to welcome you today and thank you for taking the time to join us. So I am the co-chair of not only the ethics committee, but also the programs committee. And so we have been very active as well. My co-chair is Vincent, and I'm sorry if I butcher your last name, Alvila. So I don't think I've ever said his last name before, so my apologies if I've said that incorrectly. But we have been sort of integral in planning this symposium, and so I'm happy to see that NTAC was available to speak. Several of my recommendations and suggestions did not kind of fell through, so I'm happy to see that NTAC was able to join us today. As we move forward, we have, like I said, we've been meeting on pretty much a monthly basis. And our next project will then be our summer symposium, which Brett is hoping that we will be in person for, and I hope that that is true as well. So the topic for that will be prevention through education. So as a school counselor, former school counselor, I am very much involved in wanting to prevent things from before they happen. So this is a big passion of mine. So we have 4 to 5 different topics that we're kind of looking at as far as early childhood education, and then generational trauma has occurred and how we can address that earlier on. Responding to concerning behavior. So what are the messages that are behind those behaviors? What is the trauma that has been reflected from the behaviors that we're seeing? And how do you engage with students? And why it is problematic to focus just on indicators. So obviously we all know that there is no necessarily profile, and my focus is obviously K-12 and then higher education as well. There's no profile for a school shooter, or someone who's going to commit violence. So we need to be very aware of those sorts of things. Additionally, protective factors, so learning about emotional regulation, potentially some mentorship topics that we have discussed as well. And then resources for the faculty and adults, how to help the adults that are working in the schools to understand trauma, helping to build resilience, learning about different things, especially with situations with educational displacement too. So understanding that it may not be easy to get a student's records or things of that nature. And then also what's working in the schools and the programs that are being successful so far. And then lastly, we have talked about creating a survey to send out to our membership to find out what your interests are. We're not, we're experts in our own areas. We would like to know what you as the network members are interested in learning more about. So be on the lookout for that as well. And I think that's all I have. So I just want to thank you again. I'm looking forward to talking with you all later.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Nicole. And that survey is out. So I'm going to ask Neil to populate the link in the chat one more time. And that survey gives feedback on a range of network activities, but we did include a question at the request of the programs committee about future topics. And we really want input from all of you to make sure this network is as responsive to your needs as possible. So last but certainly not least is Sammy Wicks. He is co-chair of our Public Relations Committee. Sammy.
Hey, good morning, everyone. At least for me on the West Coast. It's nice to be here with you all today. My name is Sammy Wicks, and I have the benefit of having Bruno Diaz be my partner in crime, co-chairing the committee with me, the Public Relations Committee. I think you all heard a lot about ethics and membership, and I think that the Public Relations Committee really is tied to a lot of the work that those two committees are doing as well. So a lot of the work that's been happening with the committee has been trying to figure out, one, how to draw people in and determine what disciplines may be underrepresented in this space and also in the Prevention Practitioners Network, and to try to come up with strategies of engaging those folks and to drawing them into the network. And just as Brett said, being as inclusive as possible. So coming up with a process of doing outreach and engagement in that sense, but also messaging as it relates to engaging with community members too about resources such as the directory that's being built out that Dave referred to. And when I talked about the link between the committee's work, another piece of what's happening on the Public Relations Committee is also looking at, as we try to draw folks in from all of these different disciplines and have them be engaged in this space, trying to look at what engagement and participation will look like for them. So the code of ethics that James was referring to, making sure that there's established criteria so that, once we invite sort of everybody in that's part of this sort of coalition of the willing, making sure that we create a space that's conducive to us moving this work forward, which I think is really important as well. Some of the other things that we're working on look at how do we also engage folks in professional spaces. And a big part of that focus is looking at not just using the established network within the Prevention Practitioners Network of folks and sort of doing a word of mouth outreach, but also looking at how we can build formal partnerships with organizations, professional organizations, like organizations that are devoted to, school safety officers, devoted to social workers, devoted to school psychologists and other sort of general psychologists, but looking at other networks such as the Association of Threat Assessment Professionals as well, and looking at those partnerships in a way that where we have sort of a beneficial, or sort of a dually beneficial relationship where folks from those organizations get the benefit of engaging in this space and learning more about the work that's being done in this space, but also them being able to, us being able to benefit from some of the professional expertise that they have as well from those different disciplines, which really goes to, again, as this becomes more inclusive, it also affects the programming that we have as well. And the representation that we have on panels like the ones that are going to happen over the next 2 days, and making sure that we are capturing all of these different lenses and experiences and expertise. So that's just pretty much a wrap up of everything that's going on.
Thank you for that, Sammy. So as you heard from multiple of our co-chairs, these committees are the space where we build this network together. As Sammy said, it is a coalition of the willing, and we always welcome additional members for these committees and additional voices in this process. So even if this is the first network symposium that you're joining, we hope you'll consider joining these committees you can do so by reaching out to practitionersnetwork@mccaininstitute.org. The email is also populated in the chat.